And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. And today, my guest is Erika Andersen. Erika is the founding partner of Proteus, which is a coaching, consulting, and training firm that focuses on leadership readiness. She is the author of several books, the most recent being Be Bad First, Get Good at Things Fast to Stay Ready for the Future. That was in 2016. And then she also did Leading So People Will Follow, Being Strategic, Plan for Success, Outthink Your Competitors, Stay Ahead of Change, several others. She's contributed to HBR. She's worked with some awesome companies like Hyatt and GE. She's a speaker, been featured in Harvard Business Review. And here she is today. So welcome aboard, Erika.
Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, no, so am I. So obviously, we were just talking before we hit the little record button here. You've been doing this for 30 years.
Yes, I have been doing this for almost 30 years. 2020 will be the 30th anniversary of my company.
That's awesome. And I'm assuming everything is exactly the same as it was when you started, right?
You bet. Yeah. Oh, 100%. Especially
So,
when it comes to, technology.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. You're still faxing and things. What have been the things that you've done the most of in terms of activity, whether it's authorship, speaking, consulting, that's been the most gratifying and then the most profitable?
Oh, that's a great question and a hard one to answer, I might add. So we just to do a little bit of a thumbnail for your listeners. Our business is, as you said, coaching, consulting, and training, really. And so we do a lot of executive coaching. We do a lot of consulting around change, around organization effectiveness, around the future that companies want to create for themselves, and also we do a lot of leadership and management training. And those are differently profitable depending on what we do. And then I personally have written books, as you said, and also do some speaking. Although the core of what I do is serve clients, run the business, and deliver facilitation and coaching. That's the core of what I
Right,
do.
right.
And as far as making money on books, I have not made money on books. My books have done well, according to how business books usually do. I've sold probably 60,000 books altogether. But that's. I mean, some people make money that way, but for us, it's been a huge credibility builder, a huge brand builder. It's lovely to have all the books as resources to give to clients in addition to the in-person stuff that we do with them. But I have not made money on my books.
Yeah, so let me just play that back. So 60,000 books is an impressive number in this market, and that's looks like 4 books there. So even if you equally divided that, and it probably doesn't, it's 15,000 a book. That would be considered a success today by the world of publishers, right?
Yeah, and it's basically the longer my books are good backlist books. My first one now has 25 or 30,000 sold. My second one is between 15 and 20. My third, so it goes like that.
Got it. So the books are a great calling card, not a great money maker. How do you sort of weigh and balance all these things together, right? Because you said you're not a speaker, but you speak. I mean, your primary revenue is the company, right? And maybe tell us a little bit about what the company does and how it's connected to the IP and the content and such that you've written about.
Oh, I love answering that question. So as you said, the core of what we do is leader readiness. We really help leaders get ready to lead, for their very first leader jobs, and then continue to be ready to grow and become more influential, as all the way up to being the CEO or the chairman of the board, and help them also be ready as leaders, but be ready for the future, be more resilient, be more planful, all those kinds of things. And we have 3 practice areas that we work in to do that. The first we call developing leaders, strengthening leaders, and that's where our executive coaching practice and our team coaching practice live. So it's how do you help leaders be better in groups and individually? And our second practice area we call clarifying vision strategy, and we do that. We help people get clearer about where they want to take their companies and how to get there. Our change management practice also lives in there, and our org effectiveness practice. And then our third area is called building skills and knowledge, and we do leadership and management training, and we can deliver our own IP, but we also can help client trainers to deliver our IP or other IP.
Got it.
So that's the whole business. We have about 20 consultants and and then a staff. And the way the IP is connected is my Leading So People Follow book is strongly connected to our strengthening leaders area. We use it in executive coaching to help people see how followable they are as leaders. The growing great employees, and actually all four of the books, we have IP around all four of them for our building skills and knowledge part in our training. And being strategic book is really the heart of what we do in clarifying vision and strategy. We use that process that's described in that book and in helping organizations figure out the future they want to create for themselves. So it's really, really baked in.
So it sounds like it's fairly straightforward for you to map sort of books or subsets of your book, chapters, sections, etc., against different solutions and offerings for different segments of the business. Is that a fair?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's talk about that, because I think what happens in too many instances that I see, someone writes a book and they think about it from their perspective. So that might be from an academic's perspective, a consultant's perspective, an experienced business perspective, and they're sharing what they know around something: leadership, management, resilience, innovation, whatever. But they're not thinking about it from the other perspective, of the consumer perspective, meaning, how do I, as an organization, process this information at the enterprise level, meaning, different levels of the organization, frontline, mid-level, leadership, etc., in order to get people proficient in that, right? So when you're writing the books, or when you've written the books and the articles, how does that impact sort of your style and the way that you put the work out there?
It's a wonderful question, and it's different for the different books. So the first book I wrote, which was called Growing Great Employees, is really sort of the art and practice of being a good people manager. It came out 12, 11 years ago. And it was literally written based on our existing IP. I felt like we had really good skill-based management training.
So wait, you had, just to make sure I get it. So you've got the consulting firm, skill-based management training, and then the light bulb goes off and says, I think we're going to write a book and sort of use that as the forcing mechanism to codify and put together all that I've got. Is that?
In a way, yeah, that's pretty close. What I actually said to myself was, we do all this stuff and it's really helpful, and I don't see a book like this.
Okay.
I thought, okay, there are books like Peter Drucker books that are dense, kind of philosophical tomes about management. And then there were kind of, 1 Minute Manager, quick tips and tricks. But I didn't really know of a book that was not just a compendium, but that was a real, like, Boy and Girl Scout handbook.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, if you want to be a good people manager, here's the why and the what of doing that in a very practical, hands-on, roll up your sleeves kind of way. I couldn't find that book. And I thought, okay, I could write that book. That would be a helpful book based on what I already know and what we're already doing. So that's how that came to be.
And at this point, you're already in business 15, 20 years, right?
Yes, 15, 16 years, exactly.
So how did that process, what did it do for the business? So then you've got all this IP, you're running the business, it's going well. You get the idea to put it in a book. How does that impact the business, getting that first book out there?
It was amazing. I mean, it was funny because it was amazing and completely different than we thought. My business partner and I thought, okay, we got to be ready for 1 million people to buy this book. That didn't happen. But what happened was, and I'm sure your other listeners have experienced this who have written books. When you get a book, especially whenever that was, 10 or 12 years ago, a book published by a really reputable publisher, and then especially if you get well reviewed in high places, it immediately and to a bizarre degree changes people's perception of you.
Right. I always call it the cocktail party problem, where all of a sudden everybody now thinks that your IQ suddenly went up 40 points or something.
Yes.
Like we won't tell them the truth, but that's
exactly. I would go into meetings with prospective clients, and I knew that I was precisely the same person that I'd been 4 months before when my book had not been published. And exactly as you say, they think you're smarter and more capable and you could actually help them. And so that was amazing. And there was certainly a halo effect for the other consultants. I had 3 or 4 at the time to say, our founder published this book. It's well reviewed, published by so-and-so. So that was the main thing I noticed. And then there's a little add-on with each subsequent book, but the really 0 to 1 books is the big difference.
So it's a differentiator. It sort of greases the skids, if you will, of the process. And I would also imagine it would get you, sort of invited into situations and scenarios from a client perspective that they might not have considered you for before.
That's exactly right.
Good.
Yes.
Okay. So it's a game changer from that way. And the other thing that you said that I think is really, really important, given that you're not a solo practitioner, right? So you've got a firm, and there is a benefit to everyone in the firm to be able to say, our founder, Erika so-and-so, right, just wrote this amazing book. Can we send that to you? So even though their name's not on the cover, consultant number 1, 2, or 3, there's totally a halo effect that permeates your organization.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and we've seen that over the years, and the more books I have out, the more it seems to help. It's like, oh well, here's let me send you a copy of Erica's third book because that really has. Wow. Okay. So yeah, it's super helpful in that regard.
Great, great. What are the other things in terms of so the book in terms of getting you into scenarios that you wouldn't have been in before and sort of the halo effect for the organization? Touch on it for a moment from the inbound side. Are there scenarios where someone buys the book at the airport or wherever they buy a book or download or whatever, and then reaches out to you and say, I think you might be able to help me, and they've subsequently become a client?
There is some of that, but what has happened more often is a kind of less direct secondary effect. And I'll use my Forbes blog as an example. So after my second book came out in 2009, which was Being Strategic, wonderful publicist who Barbara.
Yes, yes.
She got me a little gig writing a guest column for Forbes.com based on the premise of the book. And they liked it well enough, and it did well enough, got enough hits, that Barbara asked, and I was invited to become a regular blogger, a regular contributor at Forbes. And that, having that blog for the last 8 years and blogging regularly and being able to link people back to our website and my website we have gotten lots of requests from that. So the ways in which I've been able to get my message out because I am an author of books, whether it's Forbes or doing things at HBO.com or the kind of associated writing that I've done, that has become a real source of leads for us.
So there's a bit of a flywheel effect, right? Without the book, you don't have this, but with the book, it leads to this door and this door and this door, and there's sort of a compounding effect that apparently has happened for you as well as for many others. Given that your first book was in 2006, which I would say was sort of the gilded age of publishing or the beginning of the end, depending on your perspective, and your last book was in 2016. Tell me a little bit from your perspective, because I clearly have an opinion on this, sort of how the publishing landscape has impacted what you can do or how you do it as an author.
I guess the main things I've seen over this 10 or 12 years of being in operating this realm of authorship and publishing is, though it seems impossible, when my first book came out, the main focus for the publisher and me was getting it into bookstores. Right. Can you get it into Barnes and Noble? How many will they take? How many of their branches will they put it in? And now, obviously, it's really all Amazon. If you can get it into some mortar stores, that's nice.
Yeah, I was going to say, for those of you under 30, Google Barnes and Noble. I mean, it's a big place. They used to sell a lot of books. You may have noticed it.
And so that's been a huge shift. And really, especially with the last book, you do everything as an author to try and get yourself well positioned on Amazon. And one of the things my last publisher, who I absolutely love, Bibliomotion, who sold, unfortunately, they sold. And for my next book, I want to find some Bibliomotion-like publisher. So if you can give me some inside information, that'd be great. But in any case, one of the things they did was, for instance, they figured out where that book might do really well in terms of the Amazon categories. And the one they figured it would do really well in is a category called knowledge capital. So you were able to say that Be Bad First was number one in the knowledge capital category when it came out, which is a good thing to be able to say. So really, marketing directly to Amazon is critical now in a way that it wasn't even on anybody's radar screen.
Yeah, and I think a lot of authors aren't really aware that the hardest part of the book is not necessarily writing it, but understanding the landscape of how people consume content, not just books, but short form blogs based on the same content, the whole mix of modalities and formats, and then how people the way people even buy books today is so different than it was 10 or 12 years ago, when you'd walk into a Barnes and Noble with a nice latte or something and browse and spend an hour or two. Now it's, maybe waiting at Starbucks for the same coffee, but you're clicking buy on the Amazon button on your phone, right? And that's the end of it.
Yes, exactly. And that's exactly right. And one of the things that I've always said, you may have heard me say this at various authors' conferences that we went to together, is that really, if you're going to be an author and going to be successful by whatever lights you think of that, you need to think of yourself as being the CEO of your book.
I love that.
You're not just writing it, you're then getting your product to market, making sure it finds its audience, making sure that insofar as possible, you're making a profit either directly or indirectly. That's up to you. And a lot of new authors, I think, believe that that's going to be up to the publisher, and that is less and less the case.
Yeah. So when you say CEO of the book, I love that term because, as a CEO of a company, Erika, you wouldn't say, well, instead of being the CEO, I'm in charge of, one small piece of one small service line of the business. You're the CEO. So that means you're looking at strategy, you're looking at sales, you're looking at marketing, you're looking at distribution, you're looking at the content, right? All those other things. But I think sometimes people, really, really smart people, put on this sort of author mask and think, well, I just have to write great words, right? I have to put this together and put my thoughts together, and I'll do the research and all that. And then, there's this fairy tale of a publisher. They will make it rain and magic will happen, and that's just not the case. But I like the idea of thinking of yourself as a CEO of your book.
And unless you're, Pat Lencioni or Jim Collins, the publisher is not going to be the CEO of your book. You're going to have to figure it all out yourself. And to pretend that you're just the writer is exactly, to your point, like someone who is the CEO of a company who says, "Oh no, I'm just the head of R&D."
Right. I just like IT, so I'm just going to do that part of it, and everything else will fall into place. Well, this has been great. A lot of great information. The sort of the changing landscape, the ability to develop the book from the reality of your business. I love that you get a successful business, and then 15, 16 years into it, pull the book from it, and then continue to go down that path. Any last thoughts in terms of things that you would share in terms of new things that you're discovering relative to getting your content out that might be working, or things that used to work and you're not doing anymore? Any final thoughts to share?
Yeah, and I would, I think, pick up on what you said. So we kind of went down this path, and then we went down another path. The first two books, Growing Great Employees and Being Strategic, were based on IP that we already had and were offering to clients. So it was basically just that. And then what people will follow was newer IP. It was IP that I had developed and knew that I was going to write a book about. But in all three cases, we already had existing stuff that this book was about. But Be Bad First was interesting because it was a model that I developed post. It came out in 2016. The last one had come out in 2012, and it was a model for learning that I developed in between. And so it was new. And so while I was writing the book, we were developing the Be Bad First training, the Be Bad First IP. And so I really want to reinforce what you said before, that the best way to make money with a business book these days is to have IP, to have the IP that is reflected in the book available in other forms. Because if you don't, it is extremely unlikely that you are going to make a profit on your book. I'm sorry.
Well, and the book is the least, right? So if you sell a book for $25 or whatever, and as an author you're going to get $1 or $2. Again, unless you're Lencioni, there aren't a lot of. This isn't a high volume business. You need to figure out how to be in a low volume, high ticket business. So what are the derivatives that come from that? Workshops, licensing, video, all that sort of fun stuff. And I would argue, and I think you'd probably concur, Erika, that if you haven't figured that out, don't bother doing the book because it's a hell of a lot of work. And you just cut off the ROI by not having the other.
That is exactly correct. So make sure that the IP is really robust, that you've thought it all the way through, that it's not just a book and then, hey, we'll see what happens. You have to really, you're the CEO of the book. You have to understand all the product lines that arise from that book that you're going to be able to monetize.
Well, great stuff. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate your perspective, and I think the audience will as well. Really good stuff here, and not theoretical. It's real life stuff that has worked for you, and I think will work for others. So I appreciate your time.
We have a couple of seconds. I want to say one last thing because I think so. The other thing that I think is really critical is that for me, everything that I've written is, I think, important in the sense that I think it can be truly helpful to people, and I think that's essential. I don't think that you can really succeed with a book that you only kind of believe in. So I think it's important for you to think that what you're saying really important, is really going to be helpful, and then to have a three-dimensional way to monetize it.
Yeah, no, I think that's great because there's so much fluff and filler out there. And the resource that everybody is fighting for today is not dollars, it's time. So
Exactly.
if I'm going to invest, 4 hours, 6 hours, whatever it is in your book, it better be good, right? Because otherwise, you've actually damaged the brand. Where I picked up your book and read it and said, "Oh my God, this is the same fluff I've seen 50 times." And people are smart. People are too smart and too savvy to get that. So I love that have something to say. Obviously, is a good thing. Well, I appreciate your time today. Thank you for coming on board, and we will talk again shortly. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Peter.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.